said you're in South Africa.
My wife's mom has just finished building a house. We're sitting in it now. Like when I say just, as in just, I can still smell the varnish on the floors.
Oh my gosh.
Cool. So yeah, it's been a little bit chaotic just coming in and helping with the moving. And I've got 3 kids. And so they're also insane and running around and loving being around Granny. So
My gosh.
yeah, looking forward to a bit of a break, but it's been cool.
So fun. I think South Africa officially makes you the furthest distanced guest on the podcast. Most folks are US based, so congratulations. We'll send you your award probably in like 5 to 6 weeks as shipping is delayed to South Africa. At which time you'll probably be back home. So where do you normally live when you're not on adventures with your 3 kiddos down in South Africa?
Yeah, so I normally live in Spain. I live in the south of Spain, just outside of Granada. Also, yeah, beautiful part of the world. My mom is Spanish originally, and dad is South African. So I'm a mongrel, and we live there with our kids on a piece of land, lots of fruit trees. Yeah.
Well, Andalusia is one of my absolute favorite places to go. I just 2 weeks ago came back from Malaga. I used to live in Granada, in Albaicin.
You did?
Yeah, you're living my dream life. Yes, absolutely.
Nice. Albaicin is a lovely little neighborhood. Yeah, very vibey, and yeah, it's got a cool vibe.
Vibey.
Yeah,
lots of hills. My quads were never stronger, but it was amazing. So you're originally from Andalusia.
Yeah, you are.
No, you are. Are you originally from? You said your mom is Spanish. Are you originally
from? My mom
from?
is Spanish. She's originally from. Well, her family's from Madrid, but she grew up most of her life in South Africa. So sort of the blood is Spanish, but the culture is more South African.
Amazing.
And so I don't know what that makes.
So where did you spend most of your life?
I mean, I grew up mostly in South Africa, but my parents are musicians and artists, and so they moved around a lot. They traveled quite a bit. I spent quite a lot of time in the Middle East. I spent 1.5 years in Egypt learning Arabic and going to school in the desert. It was a fun experience.
Amazing.
So I was quite well traveled by the time I went to about 8 different schools before I hit high school. And so, I was used to sort of, traveling a lot, getting the travel bug, meeting new people, making new friends, being open to new cultures. And that's certainly something that stayed with me. And so when I met my wife, we were both very kind of aligned on like, we want to travel, we want to get out, and it's nice to be a foreigner. I know that sounds weird, but I like being in a foreign place. Maybe you relate.
Very much so. I think one of the most defining moments of anybody's life is when they realize that they're starting to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and they just unlock this whole new dimension of who they are and how they walk through life. So I can relate to that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
I'm so curious. I mean, with creative parents and with traveling and spending so many times in different communities, I'm so curious to hear how the role of community has shaped your life. And now that it's part of your life's work or the work that you're making impact on, talk to me about how your foundational experiences in community have now shaped the impact you're making through your work.
So I'll come at it differently at first, because community building and being in a community and operating in a community, making connections, for me is a very creative experience. And that probably comes from the fact that I'm a creative at heart. So like I said, my parents are musicians. I didn't fall far from the tree on that. I played lots of music. I used to be in bands. I used to write music. I write a lot as well. So the creative energy has always been inside me. And that's very much what I've brought into the business world as an entrepreneur, starting 4 businesses. And so I've always enjoyed playing and being curious and kind of solving problems in a creative way. And I often kind of come in and, people say, oh, okay, well, what do you do? What kind of entrepreneur are you? And, I don't have a cool answer in saying that I build technology, or I help to build bridges, or, I dig oil out of a well, or whatever it is. But my product is people. I work with people. So community building for me feels like a very creative type of exercise, because you're exercising a couple of different muscles at the same time. You're being attentive to someone in conversation. You're being receptive to new information. You're engaging your empathy. Your sense of kind of creative question asking. There's so much to unpack there, and maybe we'll get into it there. But for me, I've always loved the kind of what you can call the networking experience, the getting to know you part of that. I have in my Calendly, I kind of make space, probably at least 4 or 5 hours a week, where I dedicate like this to just open time where anyone can book calls with me. Obviously, I dedicate a lot of that to my community, my humble mind community, because I make a real sort of thing of meeting every one of my community members at least once. But it's so rewarding because you get to just take in someone else's energy, you get to share something. And the beautiful thing is that more often than not, it actually ends up yielding some sort of opportunity, some kind of way to work together, some kind of collaboration, just bubbles up from the surface in a beautiful way without trying, without selling or trying to sort of push anything. Obviously, because I found if you do that, then those things don't happen. So the kind of the creative exercise of getting to know someone, listening, following your own curiosity, noticing how they respond and all that has been such a, especially over the last 3 years, a big passion area of mine that I've found that I could really channel into building communities where you're doing that, on a bit of a bigger scale. So yeah, building relationships is just such a passion of mine. And I think it came from being as a kid, kind of being in a strange land, often in the Middle East, for example, where I had to kind of I'm an only child as well. So I had to sort of make it work. You don't speak my language? Okay, I'll just try and speak yours. And I suppose practice helped to bring that out in a cool way. And now it's turned into a big passion.
That's so beautiful. Well, you mentioned people as your product, and as an entrepreneur, 4-time entrepreneur as well, too. I'm curious to hear most folks, when they go into starting a business, they're solving a fundamental problem. As you've gone and built your businesses, is there a single fundamental problem with people that you're trying to solve or enhance through the work that you're doing?
I love the way you phrased that. And the answer is definitely. I think it's on different levels. I think on one level, I am seeking to sort of solve the problem of authentic connection between people, whether it might be in traditional business relationships, maybe it's in a sales situation, perhaps it's I mentor a lot of startups as well. So often it's being able to, make the right impression, curry favor with investors. But ultimately, all of that relies on, being able to authentically connect with someone who's in front of you. And I think that we often do that the wrong way because we think that we need to connect with someone in the way that we think they want us to connect with them. And that's never the case. And the reason for that is because, especially when you don't know someone, it's a blank slate. There's no need to fulfill an impression that you think someone already has of you. They don't know you yet. So it means that you've got no cost at being your authentic self and letting that just be. I spoke with Melissa from Matcha, who I know you know, a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about authentic connection. And for me, that's always about just being yourself. People think that, being authentic requires you to do things, requires you to be someone. But really, I think it's about it's a subtraction. It's a dropping of these things and letting who I am, my kind of, the way I move my hands, the way my voice lilts up and down, whatever it might be, the way I might kind of look to the side, those things, I need to let those things hang out because that's me. And if you don't want me to be me, then it means that that this interaction is not going to go anywhere. But if you're okay with that and I'm okay with it, then it means that there's something here and there's reason to continue. So I think that in the business world, if you like, even though things are changing for the better, but certainly in kind of bigger organizations where there's sort of a lot more stress, there's a lot more kind of rigid thinking and siloed structures, that kind of inauthenticity is still very much the order of the day. And I think that isn't just something that irritates me, but it also has massive cost to society and massive business cost. Because if we can't motivate people and we can't get the best out of them for who they are, how are we ever going to solve the real problems that beset us? And so being able to connect people to who they are and allow that to shine in the way that they connect with others, I think is really a big part of the problem that I'm trying to tackle in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. At least with Connected Brand, our thesis is that the connection to the self, the connection to your team, the connection to your customers, and the connection to your community is what makes, in totality, a connected brand. But it all starts with that connection to the self. And I'm super curious, here in the US, it's been labeled as the loneliness pandemic. People feel isolated. They feel so disconnected from, I have a theory that it's disconnection from the self, but also disconnection from each other. And it's so interesting because in the business context, it's almost like that is actually how you're supposed to show up. The conditions of operating in the business sense is to show up in that state of disconnection. How do you deconstruct that expectation, those norms in this context, and help folks actually probably step into some vulnerability and try new approaches to showing up in business in a different way?
Everything you said is bang on. And I agree completely. Yeah, that sort of disconnected self that shows up. It's not just in the US. I've got a lot of clients in the US. I know what you're talking about when you refer to that, but certainly it pervades, I think, around the world in different shades, but definitely does. I think it's because it's rewarded in some way. It's incentivized. It's linked to a sort of a scarcity mentality. It's linked to hustle culture. It's linked to, I think, a lot of things that are in and of themselves off balance and off center. And that's why it shows up in that way. But we're so distracted and pushed by fear and many other things that drive our lives on an everyday level that we don't get the time to interrogate those things and think about them, and also realize that actually I have a choice here. I don't have to show up like that, no matter what the circumstances are. Going back to what you said about the connection or disconnection stemming from the connection with the self, that's absolutely right. I do a lot of work separately. It's called expressive men's work. And I've been doing this for the last about a year or so with a group that meets in Spain, where I live in the south of Spain, just outside of Granada. And we use stories, poetry, a little bit of drama and mythology to sort of help to deconstruct the real essence of what the masculine essence should be in a modern context, because there's a lot there that really needs to be unpacked and not only explained, but felt. And part of that is reconnecting with the self, reconnecting with who I am, and also understanding that every person holds the medicine and the poison. You have the dark and the light, and you can't run away from the shadow and just go into the light, because that's not the fullness of who you are. But the moment that we can equip people with the space, the support, and the realization of those choices, of the fact that I can embrace everything around who I am, and I can channel my anger, I can channel my grief, I know what to do with it, then I can step into who I really am and realize a better connection with myself. That then means that I can be much more available for others, my family, my relationships, my business contacts in a much better way. A great teacher of mine says that we can move from sort of being, dependent or codependent, which is obviously toxic in this sense, to being interdependent. And that's really what community is. It's that beautiful network effect of the different people being able to connect with each other without there being a kind of a central link in the middle, but being interdependent on each other so that these kinds of things can be worked through, because there's support. There's the feeling of support and the feeling of a safe space. Yeah. So anyway, I can go on for hours about this because it's fascinating on so many levels. But that's, is the essence.
It really is fascinating. And what I also think, so that connection to the self gets deeper and deeper as you find referenceable examples in the world around you. So that sounds like this men's community that you've started, you're using the arts to help show examples so that folks can reference that and use that as a blueprint to self-identify and understand what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and how they're showing up. But community functions in the same way, right? Like, that's a reference point for you to validate or invalidate, in some cases, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and give you that sense of deeper connection to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It also requires you to have my kind of favorite word at the moment is curiosity. And there's nothing, kind of special about it, because we hear it all the time. If anything, it's almost bordering on becoming a cliche. Especially in the business world, how that is a modern day superpower. Be curious, yeah. At the same time, though, it is a superpower, and it is a superb word because of what it really is. Curiosity is something that allows you to look at a situation or approach a question and in the real way, by suspending the rules. And as soon as I can look at something and I can open my curious mind to it by knowing that whatever got me here, whatever rules or guidelines or conventional thinking should be applied, I don't have to apply any of that. And that is where great creative new ideas, beautiful relationships can blossom. Just the kind of the freedom to play on things come up. And that also allows you to, you mentioned the V word, another great word, vulnerability. When we're curious and when we're open about things, that allows us to step into a space of vulnerability more easily. Simon Sinek says that, you don't build trust by offering help. You build trust by asking for it. And when I heard that the first time, I was like, woo, oh my God, let me take 5 minutes, because it's so true and it's so profound. You've got to be able to show and embrace being vulnerable in order for others to feel that they can also be vulnerable around you. And without being able to penetrate that layer, no connection or any kind of relationship can go deeper than surface level. And that's another issue often in the business world, how the fact that, a lot of the interactions are just at the surface level, and they could be far richer, but we don't create the space or the invitation to be curious and to allow each other to be vulnerable. And so I'm hoping to change that. Yeah. One little bit at a time.
It's so powerful, though, right? To deconstruct the norms that have been predefined by legacies and legacies of people that have come before us about how you should show, what's the right way to show up in business. And that V word, vulnerability, was nowhere near the definition of standardized business conduct, and let alone asking for help in the world of hustle culture, where the asking for help is saying that you're not good enough on your own. And then it just perpetuates this cycle of eroding the ego and eroding the self-value that we see in ourselves. And I love that word curious too, by the way. I use that word in the context of children who have no preconceived notion, who are coming in as a blank slate and asking why, genuinely, because there is no information that already lives in the categorization of whatever they're asking about. And so I wish we could approach that with as little pre-existing context in our lives and just show up with a blank slate and be curious and open to learning and learning new things.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
3 kids, I'm sure you have a lot of people asking why all the time.
I was about to say that, I've got 3 kids, and they're great teachers. I think often kids, especially young people as well, but just kids, especially when you become a parent, you realize that they teach you a whole lot more than you could ever hope to teach them. It's just that's how it works. And they're a great reminder of kind of learning how to be curious, or retraining myself, for me to be able to be curious and to not take things for granted, not to snap to decisions and to judgments too quickly, almost as though you're trying to operate from their vantage point. And I have to say that the world is a lot more interesting, a lot more colorful, a lot more creative when you do that, because you end up seeing the little details and the little invisible connections that otherwise would remain completely hidden. So we've got a lot to learn from kids, like Picasso, right? Every kid is born an artist, but the trouble is remaining one as you grow up. So there's a lot to learn there.
So powerful. And of course, Picasso, south of Spain. You'd be remiss if you didn't mention Picasso.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was also very intrigued by the work that you're doing at Humble Hive as well, too. And so I want to spend some time learning more about how this organization is looking at this problem we've outlined right now, where the disconnection from the self is causing harder connections to be made effectively in communities. So tell me some more.
Yeah. So Humble Mind for me.
My apologies. I said Hive. My bad.
No, that's right. Humble Mind for me means having an open mind, but also having an open heart. And you can't have any progress, any professional or personal development improvement without, the one or the other. And just before I started Humble Mind, I worked for a blockchain company. It was back in the sugar high of the crypto craze, which we seem to be in the midst of right now as well. Not that I'm checking every 5 minutes, but that for me ended up being a really toxic environment and toxic space. I was ultimately fired. I didn't see eye to eye with the CEO. It was one of the only jobs that I ever took. I'm much better being my own boss. I'm just a terrible employee. I end up just wanting to take things over. So yeah, don't ever hire me. But
noted. That's the only call to action for this episode.
Yeah, don't hire me. Don't check me out. Yeah. But just that experience, among many different things, made me really want to kind of reconnect back to the things that matter to me. And that is people, creativity, curiosity, and also embracing learning and knowledge transfer in a group. So I've been the recipient of a lot of great coaching, a lot of good mentors, a lot of good people supporting me, who've over the years helped to provide the right, a little bit of advice, focus me on the right questions. And I've also passed that on in the form of being a mentor too. But I love the interaction between, when you have a mentor, and a mentor can be someone on the side of the street. It can be a parent. It can be kid, it can be a business, it can be anybody. It doesn't have to be a mentor figure. It can be someone who just appears at the right time and helps to provoke a new bit of thinking for you. And I just love that interaction. And I also love it in a group. So Humble Mind started off as a community space where really we started with like about 10 people as an inner circle, where we could look at sometimes difficult issues, complex discussions. We talked a lot about AI in the beginning. And that's now moved on to leadership, to neuroscience, to understanding how to build a business, to copywriting, to Gen Zs at work and generational divides, where there's such a big kind of topic set that we often talk about as a group, which is just awesome. But it's always done in a similar way. There's a format to how we run our community events. So everyone's on the same level. There's no sort of expert hierarchy. Everyone gets a chance to speak. You're encouraged to be off mute as much as possible. You get to contribute. You get to listen. We get to entertain different perspectives, even if especially actually, if we don't agree with them, we have to create that space where we have that open mind, open heart. And that means that we need to listen to people who we disagree with. And that must be okay, as a starting point, even if it's hard. And what's great about it is that there's been such a groundswell, especially this year, of people who've kind of just right off the bat, Alex, I want to sign up. I get it. I love this. It's what we need, So it's been such a great kind of affirmation after a lot of time, 18 months and sort of building this in a way where I really know, kind of where it's going, or, do people even want this? And slowly that started to kind of come back to me and realize, okay, there really is something here. I'm on the right track. So now we're at over 400 members. We've just kicked off paid memberships, which I'm really excited about. We're hosting some live summits next year, and things are really starting to flower in the right way. And I think it really does come back down to sort of helping professionals and, career professionals, entrepreneurs, small business owners, founders, to sort of have that space where they can intersect between personal development and also professional tools, and have the space to learn from a group who's like them and sometimes not like them. So that's really the essence of what I'm doing and what we're building. Yeah. And it really is becoming its own thing. It's also becoming its own business in a sense, which we can also talk about. Yeah.
You mentioned one thing I want to double click on real fast too, which is the fact that there is healthy debate and healthy conflict. I thought you didn't use this term conflict, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that it is conflict when two people don't agree on the same thing. I actually think that's a really good sign and signal of an effective community, because if you step into a community where your ideas are homogenous, you have no room for exploration or evolution of your thought processes or others' thought processes, you're going to end up not actually having a lot of things to do and accomplish within that community. So I love that you're finding that folks are showing up with, debates and with things that they can contest one another with and challenge one another with, if only to build something better with the sum of the parts of people's beliefs.
Yeah. It's essential. You're right. And it's essential because I've noticed that when it does happen, or if there is a disagreement or something, there's such a great level of people curation in the community that it quite quickly sort of sorts itself out, or there's this sort of a misunderstanding and it's like, oh, okay, I get what you mean. It doesn't get to the point where now we want to rip each other's heads off. Thank God.
Right.
So
the healthy debate side of this, the healthy conflict, there is very unhealthy, disruptive, counterproductive conflict.
Yes. Yeah. But it also speaks to the importance of what I call the container, the space, where everyone here is equal. We all have something to say, and it's welcome and it's okay. And it doesn't say anything extra about who we are as people, or what I think about you, or your ethnicity, or where you come from, or whatever it might be. But it's okay to be able to put it out there. And up until now, we've never had a problem. We've never had an issue with that, because I think people can kind of get that the container is also theirs to preserve. It's not just one referee in the middle kind of, wagging their finger at everyone, but, I want the space, you want the space, help me to preserve it. Help me to follow the norms that make it possible. And that helps. Yeah. And that's why really it is a community project in every sense, because everyone is part of that fabric, which is awesome.
Beautiful. I mean, you're creating this tapestry, this collective of resources that can continue to push each other forward and push all of us in turn forward as well, too, which I think is a refreshing contrast to the communities that were started in 2020 because folks didn't know what was going on or how to respond. And then the communities that kind of fell to the wayside. And We can look back at that now and laugh. Hindsight is always 2020. But as you look at the lessons we learn from creating community like that and the communities that we need to be building, what are those essential ingredients so that we can make communities effective, impactful, and not divisive, if you will, just to get revenue from assembling a bunch of folks in one space together?
Love it. And I've really had to learn this like from scratch, because I knew nothing aside from my own, maybe instinctive kind of things that I had, that I took with me. But I found that a lot of the conventional advice that I could find on YouTube, a lot of great influencers and creators, there's some good stuff there, but I found much of it really not usable, because they weren't, creating communities that had the long term in mind, that, ultimately I'm generalizing, but what I found was that a lot of the time it was really just creating an audience to help sell a product at the end of
That's
it.
exactly it.
And it's okay to have something to sell. It's okay. We all got to eat, but then don't call it a community. That's an audience. Often when I speak to businesses and organizations about this, I often say, we've got to become really clear about the definition of what you're trying to do here. Are you building an audience or a community? Both are okay. There's not one that's better than the other, but just know what you're doing and what's required. So for me, in building this community, and also how I help other businesses build communities, the one thing, or the first thing to keep in mind, which I've learned, is that it really is necessary to make sure you can meet and, as best you can, get to know each and every one of the members as much as you can. This also has the effect of making the community smaller, which I think is a good thing. We don't need more Facebook pages. We don't need 150,000 people in a community. It doesn't have to be that. We can't even think about meeting 150,000 people in your lifetime. So those real communities that stick together, that find bonds of commonalities, that can actually grow relationships with each other, that beautiful network effect, that can happen with 10 people. That can happen with 15 people. So a big part of it is getting rid of the idea that it needs to be huge, that it needs to be viral, and starting off small and possibly staying small and keeping it intimate and making sure you can meet all of them as much as possible. I think another big thing as well is being able to provide the opportunity, whether this is a platform, software, a rhythm that you have within your community, to get them to meet each other as quickly and as regularly as possible. So as you know, with Melissa, I use Matcha, the platform, and that's really helped to kind of get my community to know each other and take me out of the equation where I have to broker every situation and be in the middle. No, you guys, you know me, you're here, go and talk. And that's been a wonderful thing to see happen. I think the other third thing as well is giving your community something to do and to do together, right? It's not just enough to call it a community, but they've got to be doing something. And for me, the way I've sort of seen the kind of the best example of this is around learning and knowledge transfer and skills development. And that's very much part of the kind of the humble mind methodology, the way that I come in and now build communities. It's focusing on learning, because we all want to learn. We all have an interest in self-development. We all want to learn from each other and get better and stay accountable to our own progress. And so doing it in the context of a group really helps to heighten the sense of learning something and being excited about it and staying accountable to that progress, because you're also holding others accountable to theirs. So, so having, regular sessions, learning, giving them courses, giving everyone a chance to feed into the learning as well is really important. So having a regular rhythm of things to do, especially if you can give people something to learn about, some new knowledge to discover. So those are sort of three quick elements that have helped me a lot. And I think, help you to build a community that's authentic. Once again, coming back to that authentic connection piece. It can't just be an audience where one day you're going to be dumping a big product in the middle of it and hoping that they're going to buy it, right? People need to feel like they're part of something because it helps them, but they can also be part of the fabric that helps others.
Yeah. Like what I think is also beautiful about, especially that third pillar of how you build effective communities, that education, that knowledge transference, that goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, which is that keyword curiosity. It helps to open the aperture of curiosity and the aperture of what we know to be true in this world so that we can challenge that. We can try to find new neural pathways and conversations and grow and expand our horizons on things.
What's been fun about that, something that I picked up, because one of the kind of the flagship events, piece of content that we do at Humble Mind is the Humble Mind podcast. And that's really kind of gained ground nicely this year. We were nominated for an award, and
Congrats.
it really, thanks. Yeah, it was really kind of took shape really nicely this year. And what I've noticed is that when I invite guests on to come and talk to us, firstly, I run it like a community podcast, which means that community members, part of Humble Mind, you get to join the podcast live and you get to listen in, throw in some questions towards the end. So be part of the conversation, almost like a live studio audience kind of thing.
So fun.
Anyway, and it works well. And what I've noticed is that when I invite, more often than not always, but a lot of the time when I invite sort of speakers, kind of people who are used to delivering keynotes, when I invite them to a conversation, they don't jive very well with that format because, and that's not their fault. I think they're just used to rocking up and talking their book, kind of jumping on and let me just, let me give you 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's cool. But, and then sort of someone, pipes up in the community is like, I don't agree with that. Can we talk about that? And the speaker is sort of like,
love that.
I didn't expect that. So what's cool is being able to introduce a bit of a different conversation format, which I love. I love changing things up a little bit, but also allowing people to sort of be part of the conversation in a really inclusive, dynamic way, where it's not just, okay, I'm going to listen to you talk, but I can have the space to sort of interrogate that a little bit and get it back from you as well, if that's required. But that's been an interesting observation. Yeah. So
shifting that dynamic of broadcasting and talking at someone versus talking with and having a dialogue with someone.
That's it.
I love that. I think that that's the crux, right, of the community, right, is that validation and cross-validation of your thoughts, your opinions, and also the receptivity to somebody else's thoughts and opinions, and finding that you can hold two truths at once and their opinion and your opinion can differ. And also there's probably some messy middle where both scenarios are completely accurate and right. I love that. So cool. Well, if folks want to listen to that podcast, drop the name of the podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Humble Mind, the Humble Mind podcast.
Mind. Keep it easy. I love it. Great branding. Is the exclusive just to your community members if someone wants to drop in and listen and, be a live studio audience member?
And so it's available on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts, Google, Apple Podcasts, it's all there. To be part of the live recording with our guests when we do it, you've got to join the community for that. You can join the community for free. I always like to keep a door open to anyone who's curious and wants to groove around and see what it's all about. But that's how it works.
It's so fantastic. And if folks want to join HiveMind and be part of the community, join for free, how do they find you? What's the best way to get connected?
Yeah. So simple website, join.humblemind.co. And that allows you to check out, the full kind of domain of the community, what we do, the different resources and the events and everything that we do there. You can check out there. You can join straight there. The other side of Humble Mind is a sort of a advisory services business. So I call it a social learning company because that's essentially what all this is, getting people to learn about themselves, about new topics in a social context. And that's humblemind.co. And so there we run community activation services for other businesses, also provide advisory and consulting. And the beautiful part about that is that the kind of the core community members, which has become, the sort of inner circle of Humble Mind, all feed into that advisory. So like I said earlier, the people that are part of the community, especially, the ones who are stuck in and really get a lot from it and love to contribute, we end up collaborating and working on projects together. And so that's a big kind of part of where this has kind of emerged from. Started as a community, now it's turning into a wonderful business where I've got, nearly 400 collaborators. Any sort of situation I can walk into an organization, take Humble Mind and its community out of my rucksack and go, great, I've got just the people to help. So it's been a really fun journey on that side as well, because I love building businesses too, and realizing that community doesn't just have to be what some people might see as kumbaya, but there's a real commercial purpose to being able to build a really solid inner circle of people you trust, people whose competencies you understand and whose skills are wonderful and complementary. And you can really do some amazing things together. And that's what we started to do.
I love that. So often organizations feel as though the toolkit that they have in order to grow and scale is very much just contained within the four walls of their organization. But you're helping to reimagine to say your toolkit is endless if you just tap into a central community of experts in all different facets and all different areas of disciplines to help you grow your tool, your business from here. I love that. I think that we need more of that. I'm so thrilled to have spent this 30 minutes plus with you, almost 40 minutes plus with you. Thank you for taking time on your busy schedule there as you're traveling, get your hands full with a lot of curious minds, both grown-ups, but also the little ones as well too.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining Connected Brand. And I can't wait to continue to see how your community makes more impact on each other and also on the self.
Thank you. Thank you so much. By the way, I think you're really brilliant at what you do. I checked out Connected Brand. I really love the ethos there. I think you're an awesome interviewer as well. I've listened to a couple of the previous episodes too. So please keep doing what you're doing. And you and your community as well are also extremely welcome to check out what we're doing and become part of the community at Humble Mind. More the merrier. And I hope we can do this again soon. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Would love to. Would love to. Thank you.